So, 3 days ago marked the series finale for Superman and Lois, a moment that was bittersweet to all fans. I can tell you right now, this ending made me cry a lot more than I expected and a lot more than I care to admit. And if we could ask for the best ever ending for a Superman series and a conclusion to the CW that honestly made up for all the shit that went down in the Arrowverse, this would be it. They gave us a proper farewell that I know that everybody was moved by, giving us closure we both needed and deserved. So if you've been following the show or just want to hear my thoughts on it, buckle up because we're going to be diving into everything, the finale, the season as a whole, and what it means for the series legacy. Now, before I start, this is going to be a little bit different than what I've done before. Starting from this video and moving forward, most of my reviews will be like in a podcast kind of theme where I just talk about my opinions, no transitioning back and forth from the show. I will add some clips, but it won't be as heavy as it was before. And fair warning, this is a full spoiler review. If you haven't seen the season finale or the series yet, consider this your heads up to proceed with caution. Feel free to share your thoughts and your theories in the comments below. I always appreciate that. And I see a lot of comments and a lot of theories that I love, and honestly that's what makes this so much fun. Going back to my previous point, there are spoilers ahead. Proceed on your own behest, and I'll start by discussing the finale in detail and then zoom out and look at the entire season as a whole, and then we'll talk about the legacy of it all. But before I start all of that, let's just say the fact that the CW is over, the Arrowverse in and of itself is over, while the ending was nothing short of perfection, but I'm not gonna lie guys, I'm really fucking sad. The Arrowverse has been a huge part of my life, especially the last 10 years. Whenever I've had a bad moment or whenever I've just wanted to relax a little bit without going out, I'd open the latest episode of The Flash or DC Legends of Tomorrow or Arrow when it was good, you know, the first 3 seasons. But the fact that it's finally come to an end, even Black Lightning, I mean, Black Lightning was one of my favorites, but the fact that the Arrowverse is over genuinely sucks. I do hope that they honestly launch a new universe. If it's connected to the big screen, that would be great, like how Marvel did. But even if it's not, if it's just something small like the Arrowverse where it's just screen to screen, show to show, that would be perfect. One of the best things that the Arrowverse did was that season where all the shows crossed over. That was so fun. Like I would be looking forward to that. Like the moment the season started after they did it the first time, and the fact that we won't get that anymore genuinely sucks. Now, with that said, there are a ton, and I mean a ton, of new TV shows this year that have been nothing short of amazing, like Alex Cross, like 3 Body Problems, but honestly, a connected universe ending. I'm hoping this is just a pause so they can create a new one and we get to see more superheroes on screen, and I'm hoping the era of superheroes on screen doesn't come to an end. Now let's start talking about the episode. When the finale ended and the credits start rolling with the iconic logo appearing for one last time, it hit me. This show did something remarkable. Like I said before, the creators were conscientiously trying to make up for all the Arrowverse shows that lost their way at some point. Now, even if Superman and Lois weren't technically Arrowverse, or they were Arrowverse adjacent, it never really veered off course. The finale was a masterclass in sticking the landing, delivering emotional payoffs, and staying true to the show's core themes. Honestly, to me, this is the best finale in the Arrowverse compared to other shows, giving us a final resting place for the CW and a monologue that kind of made me cry. Especially the last half of the episode, it was phenomenal, tapping into everything that makes Superman such an iconic character. It evoked emotions, tackled grander themes about heroism, delivered a poignant, beautiful epilogue that I can promise anybody who's watched that epilogue is not the same afterwards. This wasn't just a finale of the season, it was a definite conclusion for Superman's story within the entirety of the series. Because the writers knew that this was coming to an end, they could go places that most shows wouldn't dare to explore. They tied up loose ends, delivered heartfelt moments, and crafted a true goodbye. But more about the finale a little bit later. Let's talk about the beginning of the episode. We get to see Doomsday crashing into the story, interrupting a day between Lana and John Henry Irons, who were discussing what most fans kind of forgot, that they were kind of dating. I mean, at least I always assumed that they were kind of dating. The fact that they made that small comment, oh, we went on 4 dates in like 3 years or something like that, kind of like shocked me, because I always just assumed that they were together after the whole will they won't they thing they did last season. The destruction that Doomsday brings to Smallville sets the tone for an intense showdown. Superman fights Doomsday, trying to protect his town and his family, but even he needs some help, even though he won't admit it. Now, even with his reluctance, his sons enter the fight. John and Jordan step up in a way, showing how far they've come as characters. This was a final growth moment for both of them, especially for Jordan. Like, we get to see Jordan grow up from that kind of whiny back and forth into that confident man that we all knew that he was going to turn out as. Jordan was maybe one of the characters that most nerds like myself were growing up, and the fact that we got to see him round out as a man, but that doesn't diminish from what Jonathan did. Jonathan went from that guy who was vain and that football star in Metropolis, was popular in high school, to that guy who kind of got humbled in multiple ways throughout the seasons, joined the firemen. Then when he got his powers earlier this season, which was kind of came a little bit too easy, but I get why they did it, tight budget, time constraints, and that Fraternals comment they said, my inner geek was like, yes! The first half of the finale was centered on the climax between the battles, not only with Doomsday, but also Lex Luthor. And can we just take a moment and appreciate this? Because if you think about it, these two are the two biggest villains for Superman comics, excluding maybe Zod and Darkseid. And while the fight against Doomsday was actually visually exciting, it felt a little bit rushed. Doomsday, one of the most legendary villains in Superman lore, the guy who, when killed, comes back stronger and cannot be killed by the same method. His defeat boiled down to a quick trick. Superman steps to the side, a hammer bonks him on the head, and that's it. Now, given the combination of teamwork that was done here and the fact that it symbolized Superman having to put his trust in his family and acknowledging that his boys are no longer boys, but it's time that they grew up and that they're going to be the people to step into the future, that subtle message helped me get over it. But given the build-up and the sheer menace of Doomsday, I expected something epic, more hard-fought. Sure, they have already showcased some big battles with him earlier in the season, so maybe they wanted to avoid the repetition thing, but still, I felt like it was a letdown for a villain of this caliber. Though they did redeem him, like I said before, with a subtle message and the fact that we get to see Superman fly him to the sun, look in Doomsday's face before he throws him in the sun, and just see Bizarro's eyes, and we get a flashback or like this thing where he mirrors Bizarro's face on Doomsday. And honestly, the moment we see him regain his consciousness for a second and Bizarro throws himself into the sun, honestly, maybe the only logical way to defeat Doomsday, but it was emotional as hell and kind of heartbreaking. But oh man, on the other hand, the showdown with Lex felt far more satisfying. It required teamwork, clever strategy. All the characters come together to take down Lex Luthor. Honestly showcased the show's strength in balancing individual arcs with the collective stakes. The stakes felt high, the resolution felt earned, even though the show had to work with the constraints of TV budget, especially with this season's kind of reduced resources. Despite the limitations, they managed to deliver extended sequences of chaos and destruction featuring Doomsday and Lex Luthor in a robotic suit. It was a solid action-packed send-off, especially the parts with the kryptonite and the missiles, that kind of Now, after everybody was defeated, we kind of transitioned into an emotional epilogue, and it wasn't just one epilogue, it kind of felt like two. The immediate aftermath tied up loose ends, giving us closure to various storylines, while the 1 year later portion reflected on how the characters kind of came together. Weddings, pregnancies, and reconciliations brought a sense of joy and resolution, showcasing the whole theme of family. And it's funny, when you think of Superman, you kind of imagine this alien, human, superhero can battle anybody and defeat them with world-saving feats, but the show constantly kind of reminded us that its core was always about family and relationships. The moments of human connections, like weddings, parentings, friendships, were just as compelling as the action scenes, if not more. That emotional touch gave us a connection to Superman in a way that I don't think we got from any of the previous movies. This was showcased throughout all 4 seasons, from the first episode when we see Clark moving back to his hometown in order to better connect with his family and just showing them, oh, I am Superman, to the last episode where we see in the epilogue them grow up and have kids of their own. Honestly, looking back at the show, it was a whole less about Superman and Lois and more about the legacy of the relationships that came from and through them. And honestly, what kind of made this so great was that the writers really benefited from knowing that this was the end. They weren't worried about setting up future seasons or leaving threads dangling. Instead, they leaned into themes of life and death, crafting a story that felt complete. It started with Superman's near-death experience and ended with him facing mortality in a profound way. The series explored not just Superman as a hero, but Clark Kent as a man, a husband, a friend, and by grounding those larger-than-life characters into the human experience, the show achieved something truly special. Like I said before, I connected this with each character, whether it was seeing yourself in Jordan growing up or feeling that moment where you felt grander than life and somebody just humbled you like they did with John, or getting fired from your job like they did with Lois, or just simply grounding Clark as a character, showing us the struggles that he has with his identity, with his family. Even Superman isn't the greatest father in the world. That was the start of the show. It kind of just brought a level of humility and to the show that made us fall in love with it. What we really need to talk about is the ending, because I really mean this when I say this. This might have been the most impactful and emotional ending I have seen, not just for a superhero series, but for any series I've ever watched. Or at the very least, it's in that top 5 range when it comes to this series. The time skip in the end, where it starts by showing us the happy moments in Superman's legacy, with him designing comic book accurate suits for his boys and them flying together with a comic book accurate version of Steel and Natalie, which, let's be perfectly honest, we all would have loved to see more, especially for the comic book version of Steel. I'm a fan of Iron Man, so anything with mecha suits, I am happy about, and I would have loved to see a more comic book version of Steel. Now granted, I love this version. Even without the comic book accurate version, I love this version, but the fact that they showed us a comic book accurate version of Steel with, I think it was Jonathan's suit that was designed a lot like Superboy's, which felt like a little bit of a hint towards his future. And honestly, it would have been great just to see more of that, but it also felt like they were taking a jab at Smallville, i.e. the literal start of the CW, when at the end we waited literally like 6 or 7 seasons. I don't remember how many seasons Smallville was, but we waited a number of seasons in order to see Superman fly, and that was the last moment we saw. This felt exactly like that. It felt like a moment of, this is our legacy, this is the legacy of Superman, just bask in that glory. Let your imagination run wild of what's gonna happen next, but not too wild, because they still show us a lot of what happened. After that, we get a time skip with a wedding theme. We get to see Al and Chrissy having more babies, and a moment where Jonathan and Jordan also get married and kind of transition from kid to adult when entering the parents' home, which, like, I loved that little part where they just transitioned. I don't know who the 2 actors were, but that part was perfection, along with the monologue and Superman and Lois kind of growing together, and just wow. What was even better for me was that they had a lot of grandchildren. They better showcased family and legacy, the fact that both of them grew up, and the fact that they both had large families and a lot of grandchildren just running. Better showcased like parenting we saw from Clark and Lois, the fact of the grandchildren just running around in the house, and we get to see the looks on Lois and Clark's face, just happy with their grandchildren. That was beautiful and priceless. But as they say, with happiness comes sadness, and in this case, a lot of it. Lois dying because the cancer was back, and her mentioning her father at the end, and Clark being devastated over her body, just crying endlessly. I'm not gonna lie, that kind of breaks me inside, just seeing as a man. Even though we got to see Clark heal from it all, and well, not heal, but just move on and get a dog, and realizing that he never actually had a dog, and them teasing Crypto, which was great. Like I said, with happiness comes sadness, yin and yang, and him having a heart attack literally in the same place as his father. And even though that didn't kill him, we still got to see Superman die. Even Superman was mortal. We got to see this transitioning into this, him walking into the afterlife, his boys around him, Lex Luthor on the dining table, and just Clark patting him on the back as if saying, it's okay, I forgive you. And just Lois in that stunning red dress that was mentioned in season 1. But the thing that he says at the end, and honestly, I kind of wrote this down so I don't forget it and I don't get it wrong. I came into this world alone, but when I left, I had so much. It was all because of love.
It's the thing that makes life worth living. Do everything you can to find love. To give it. To hold on to it. Because life, it goes by so fast.
And giving us what I can only describe as one of the most perfect monologue endings I've ever seen, both in real life and on the screen. Let's talk a little bit more about season 4. Let's dive into that and talk about the moments that I absolutely loved. There are very few moments that I hated in this season. Let's start off with how they did the death of Superman in the ending of the first episode, leaving a cliffhanger that nearly gave me a heart attack, because That led to an even more heart-wrenching episode in which we got the only way to save Superman was by finding his heart, and then with what happened with General Lang and him knowing that he was going to die and him shooting up with Superman's blood and just giving Clark his heart with that recording in the end. I don't know what's wrong with the epilogues in this thing. This was so freaking emotional, and the reason why Superman's death was emotional for me in the first episodes because I honestly thought he was dead, because we all knew that the theme of season 4, even before it started, from the different teasers and the different things that we saw, was all gonna be about legacy, was all gonna be about Clark handing down the torch to his two boys. So we knew that this was inevitable. So when they killed him at the start, oh god, I'm not gonna lie, that kind of threw me off a bit, because I thought, okay, is this the end? They did bring him back to life, but the way they brought him back to life was an amazing showcase of how the series handled consequences. Every major event had rippling effects, from Superman's resurrection to the choices that were made into the battle with Lex, as well as what happened with him when Lex went to prison. The way that they ensured that him getting resurrected essentially gave him mortality, proving that the writing ensured that the actions actually mattered, creating a real sense of weight and stakes that elevated the story to a whole new level. Because when you look at the Arrowverse stories and the comic books, it's like, oh, a superhero dies, throw him in the Lazarus pit, or he magically comes back to life, or he was thrown into the future and he comes back to life. Here they honestly gave consequences to actions, consequences to Superman getting resurrected, consequences to Bizarro, consequences to Lex's actions and how he went from the king of the prison at the end of season 3 to the bitch of the prison at the end, with that little thing that Manheim said. I'm gonna leave a little clip here, but even the fantastical elements like alien technology and superpowers were grounded in emotional truths, like when Superman's boys couldn't surpass a certain limit because of their human side. All of that just grounded the show. This show was about aliens, half-human children who could fly, and interspecies relationships, which kind of feels weird to say because nobody really thinks of Superman like that, but it does boil down to that. But it felt so profoundly human. And one of the most impactful elements was how the series handled Clark's dual identity. Over time, the weight of his secret became harder and harder to bear to those closest to him, who began piecing things together. The finale tackled this head-on, showcasing the emotional toll of living a lie, even for the most noble reasons. The way they revealed Clark's identity was built up masterfully, with small moments leading to climactic decisions, to just everything finally becoming clear. It was a cathartic moment that underscored the show's commitment to character-driven storytelling. How they pieced it together from the flashback they showed with him and his friend at the Daily Planet, to the townsman finding out what happened at the start of the season. And that scene of him taking off the glasses and that little quote about the glasses, how a good pair of glasses can kind of fool everybody, and the fact that there were a lot of people in Metropolis that helped him blend in. It was in the next episode where he didn't have to put on the glasses. We all felt how things had changed. But maybe the most thing I loved about this season was the focus on legacy. The way John finally got his powers, even though it did feel a little bit rushed, and how that only kind of magnified the person that he eventually became throughout, made me kind of appreciate it more. And props to the actor, because let's be perfectly honest, I kind of forgot that the guy replaced someone for the role. It felt so smooth, it felt natural. Genuinely, just props. The guy held his own, and Jordan just going through multiple growth stages in order to become a hero. The fact that he became a solid guy at the end was great. Another thing I forgot actually about the last episode was Superman and Lois combining their effort with Bruno Mannheim to ensure that poorer and more struggling communities got the attention that it deserved. And with a quote that was perfect, the season showed how everybody grew, ensuring that Superman and his family left a everlasting legacy. Looking back on the season as a whole, I might go as far as to say that this was the best season of the series. The shorter episode counts worked in their favor, keeping the pacing tight and the story focused. In previous seasons, there were times when the plot felt a little bit stretched or padded. However, here every episode had a purpose, and the balance between action, drama, and character development was spot on. Having Lex Luthor and Doomsday, the two most iconic villains, just together at the last season was a bold move, but it definitely paid off. Lex's manipulative genius contrasts perfectly with just Doomsday's mindless destruction, creating a dynamic and intense finale arc. In the end, the decision to conclude the series after 4 seasons might have been a blessing in disguise, even though I'm gonna say this, I would have loved to see more. I'm sure every fan would have loved to see more of this TV show, because it was genuinely good. It was different from every other CW TV show. It reminded me of the first episode of Black Lightning before, kind of felt like Black Lightning veered off. The fact that they avoided the pitfalls of overextension and just the show remained consistent in quality and ended at a high note. It's rare for a series to go out with such a satisfying conclusion, but Superman and Lois pulled it off. The finale encapsulated everything that made the show great, from heartfelt exploration to family to thrilling action sequences, and giving us a conclusion to both the Superman and Lois TV show as well as the CW in the most perfect way anybody could have asked for. And that's it, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the finale and the season as a whole. Did it meet your expectations? Was it a fitting end for this version of Superman? Is this version of Superman your favorite version of Superman, or somebody else maybe? Either way, the show has been a joy to watch and discuss. I am so sad that CW came to an end and the show came to an end, but I couldn't ask for a better conclusion for this. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and as always, keep talking about movies, TV shows, and Superman. Until next time, peace.